Imagine a ship in the dead of night, not struck by a wave, but slowly taking on water. Through a single, invisible hairline fracture, the cold ocean begins its silent conquest of the steel hull. Have you ever felt your value drain away in a room full of people without a single word? Why does one small comment feel like a sudden, violent breach of your very soul and personal peace? We often wait for the storm, but the true threat lies in the quiet, steady erosion of respect. You must understand that disrespect is rarely a single explosive event that changes your life in an instant. Instead, it is a calculated process, a series of subtle shifts that gradually compromise your standing in power. Like Machiavelli observed in The Prince, the foundations of sovereignty are built or broken in these small moments. It starts with a look, a brief interruption, or a joke told at your expense during a dinner. These are not accidents, but the first drops of water entering the cracks of your personal territory's hull. Every instance of disrespect acts as a deliberate test of your boundaries and your internal psychological strength. It is a scout testing the fence line of your inner citadel, looking for a weak point to exploit. People will push against you simply to see how much ground you are willing to surrender without resistance. They watch for your flinch, your nervous laugh, or the way you quickly look down at the floor. If you do not guard your sovereignty, others will naturally begin to map out the territory they can take. This is where cold empathy becomes vital, allowing you to see their testing for exactly what it is. When you choose to remain silent during these instances of disrespect, you are sending a clear, dangerous signal. Your silence tells the world that your dignity is negotiable, and your boundaries are merely suggestions for others. It invites further intrusion, suggesting that the cost of crossing you is low or perhaps even non-existent. Every time you swallow an insult, you reinforce the idea that your presence requires no real respect. You are teaching people how to treat you, and currently, you are teaching them that you are invisible. To stop the leak, you must master the art of non-reaction and the power of a strategic withdrawal. This is not about being loud or aggressive, but about maintaining the unshakable walls of your inner citadel. Even techniques like fogging can serve as a shield, neutralizing the impact of a critic's sharp verbal blade. True power resides in knowing that your territory is sacred and that no fracture should go left unaddressed. You must become the master of your own domain, a sovereign ruler who recognizes the first sign of decay. Stop viewing these moments as petty grievances and start seeing them as the critical battles they truly are. The ship is taking on water, and the time for passive observation has long since passed you by. You must learn to identify the cracks before the weight of the ocean becomes impossible to carry alone. Because before the ship sinks, there are warnings that only the most vigilant eyes will ever truly see. To understand the leak in your social ship, we must consult the master of the abyss. The world tells you to be liked, but a man from 5 centuries ago told the truth. Machiavelli spent his life studying the darkest and most hidden aspects of human nature and power. He looked past the polite masks people wear to see the raw predator instincts lying beneath them. Out of this ruthless observation, he crafted a legendary manual for the sovereign mind called The Prince. This book wasn't written for the popular. It was forged for those who prioritize survival over being liked. Machiavelli acts as a cartographer of the dark, mapping out the treacherous terrain of human social interaction. Imagine The Prince as a survival manual designed specifically for the dense jungle of a hostile environment. Are you currently prioritizing being liked by your peers over being whole and respected by yourself? He understood that sometimes the most powerful move is not a direct attack, but a strategic withdrawal. To survive, one must employ cold empathy, seeing others clearly without the cloud of emotional bias. You must build an inner citadel, a mental fortress where no amount of disrespect can ever touch you. True sovereignty begins when you master the art of non-reaction, remaining calm while the world rages outside. He might suggest fogging your true intentions, letting the shadows hide your next move from prying eyes. What if the rules of the social game were actually written in blood rather than polite smiles? Machiavelli is a cold but necessary guide for any man seeking to reclaim his personal sovereignty today. He watched how leaders rose and fell, noting that kindness is often mistaken for a fatal weakness. In a world of wolves, your primary objective is not to be loved, but to be effective. His words serve as a chilling reminder that human nature has not changed in 500 years. Through The Prince, he provides the tools to navigate a world that is often hostile and unforgiving. Every interaction is a test of strength, and every word is a move on a grand chessboard. We must learn to view our enemies with the detached precision of a surgeon performing a life-saving operation. He didn't write for the popular. He wrote for the sovereign who seeks absolute control over their life. This is the foundation of The Prince, a cold guide for navigating the dark realities of human nature. The first lesson of The Prince is observation, a cold look at the world around you. There is a silent language spoken in every room, and you might be screaming prey without speaking. Think of the social hierarchy as a constant digital scan performed by every person you meet. Human beings are efficient predators who instinctively scan their environment for signs of status and weakness. Every glance and every movement is a data point in a calculation you cannot see or stop. What does your posture say to the silent predator watching from across the crowded room? A slumped shoulder or a bowed head acts as a beacon, signaling that you are easily conquered. When you shrink your physical presence, you are essentially inviting others to step into your space. How many times have you apologized for simply existing or taking up a bit of space? Excessive apologies function as a verbal submission, telling the world that your needs do not truly matter. Machiavelli understood that power is not just seized. It is often surrendered through these tiny concessions. Being constantly available suggests your time has no value, making you a target for strategic exploitation. If you are always there when called, you become a tool rather than a sovereign individual. You are being measured against a yardstick of dominance every time you enter a new social circle. These subconscious signals are the invisible leaks in your ship that Machiavelli warned us to patch. Feel the weight of the environment as it judges your right to stand tall and speak. Every twitch and hesitant word is a trigger that can set off a chain reaction of disrespect. Building your inner citadel starts with recognizing the signals you are broadcasting to the world right now. The scan is brutal, efficient, and happens in the blink of an eye before a word is spoken. Are you projecting the quiet strength of a prince or the frantic energy of a commoner? Remember that those around you are looking for the fracture where they can exert their own influence. Your spine is the primary mast of your social vessel. Keep it straight or prepare to sink. Scarcity creates value, while constant presence invites others to take your contributions for granted. These personal triggers create a map of your boundaries, or lack thereof, for everyone to see. Now that the scan is complete and the weaknesses are found, the testing begins in earnest. You believe you are simply walking into a room, but your biology is playing a much darker game. Long before you speak, your brain is already hunting for the invisible lines of power and control. Machiavelli knew this secret well, understanding that the human mind functions as a relentless, silent social radar. We are not just social creatures. We are efficient predators designed to map every hierarchy we encounter. This internal scan happens in milliseconds, identifying who holds the crown and who is merely a follower. Within the inner citadel of your mind, a cold calculation determines your place among the surrounding pack. Every glance and every subtle shift in posture is data for this primitive, predatory survival mechanism. You are constantly measuring the strength of others while they simultaneously probe for your own hidden cracks. This is the cold empathy that Machiavelli mastered, watching the world without the interference of emotion. It is a data-driven shock to realize that your basic instincts are always looking for a weakness. To maintain your sovereignty, you must recognize that this silent mapping is happening to you right now. Most people are unaware they are being weighed and measured by every pair of eyes in the room. In the world of the prince, power is not granted. It is recognized through these ancient predatory signals. When you master non-reaction, you disrupt the radar of those looking for a way to dominate you. Your brain is looking for the apex, the one who remains unmoved while the social storm rages. If you show a flicker of fear, the predator's scan will mark you as a target for disrespect. Strategic withdrawal can be a powerful move, forcing the scanners to lose their grip on your true intentions. This is not about malice. It is about the raw, evolutionary drive to understand the social terrain. Fogging your true status prevents others from finding the leverage they need to pull you down. The radar never stops, circling every interaction to find the most efficient path to social dominance. By understanding this biological truth, you begin to see the world as Machiavelli saw his royal courts. Every social gathering is a quiet battlefield where hierarchies are solidified before a single greeting is exchanged. You must learn to inhabit your space with the quiet authority of one who knows they are watched. When you realize everyone is a predator, you can finally choose to stop playing the role of prey. This scientific reality provides the grounding for everything we will discuss regarding your personal sovereignty. The initial scan is just the data, but the training is where the real damage is done. You think you're being the bigger person by letting that small, subtle insult slide right past. In reality, you are a teacher, and you are currently teaching them exactly how to break you. Every time you ignore a minor slight, you are writing a manual for your own exploitation. Tolerating these small disrespects trains others to view your boundaries as mere, optional suggestions. You are essentially handing them a map to the cracks in your own psychological armor. Machiavelli famously observed that men are driven by only two primary forces, love or cold fear. In the arena of power, if they do not love you, they must respect your lie. When you fail to react, you aren't showing strength. You are signaling that your territory is open. Consider the boardroom where you are interrupted, and you simply wait for them to finish. By apologizing for being interrupted, you are signaling a total submission to the power of others. Is your silence a sign of inner peace, or is it a white flag of surrender? Submission acts like a slow-acting poison, numbing your senses until you lose your own worth. The prince understands that a boundary is not a suggestion. It is a hard reality of life. To protect your inner citadel, you must recognize when the first brick is being kicked away. Remember the slow leak in the ship. Small disrespects are the water filling your hull now. Every interaction is a negotiation of status, and you are currently negotiating from a weak position. While non-reaction can be a tool, passive acceptance is a wound that never truly heals. If you do not value your own time, why should the predator sitting across from you care? True sovereignty requires a sharp eye for the subtle ways people test your resolve every day. When you accept the unacceptable, you give them permission to push even further next time. Each time you apologize for existing, you shrink the borders of your own personal kingdom. The world does not reward the quiet martyr. It rewards the person who knows where they stand. Use cold empathy to see their testing for what it is, a hunt for your vulnerabilities. Techniques like fogging allow you to deflect criticism without surrendering an inch of your territory. Sometimes a strategic withdrawal is more powerful than an apology that invites further social trespassing. Stop pretending that your lack of a backbone is actually a sign of your moral superiority. Are your boundaries a stone wall or a suggestion that anyone can ignore with total impunity? If you won't draw the line, they will gladly use you to draw theirs. You've allowed others to draw their lines across your back, but the weight is becoming increasingly unbearable. Every swallowed insult doesn't simply disappear. It settles deep within the walls of your inner citadel. You believe you are practicing non-reaction, but you are actually stockpiling a volatile and silent explosive. When anger is denied its natural outlet, it turns inward, transforming into the heavy shadow of depression. This is truly anger with nowhere to go, a fire trapped inside a room with no doors. Machiavelli understood that a man who suppresses his own spirit is ultimately a man who is easily conquered. Your mind becomes a prison, where the only prisoner and the only guard are both yourself. Yet, the damage of unaddressed disrespect isn't confined to the abstract realms of your thoughts alone. Your biology acts as a meticulous accountant, and as they say, the body always keeps the score. Every time you ignore a blatant transgression, your nervous system registers a strike against your future health. The silent stress of submission triggers a biological cascade that slowly erodes your physical and mental sovereignty. Without cold empathy for your own condition, you remain blind to the internal toll of silent endurance. Chronic disrespect manifests as literal physical tension, shortening your breath and tightening the grip around your heart. A weakened body cannot support a sovereign mind, making you even easier for others to dominate completely. While you believe you are playing the long game, your body is recording every single tactical retreat. The ledger of your physical health tracks every moment you failed to claim your rightful social space. High cortisol levels become the physical echo of every social defeat you refuse to properly address. To break this cycle, you must stop being the anvil and start understanding the hammer's dark mechanics. Sometimes true power requires a strategic withdrawal from environments that demand your constant and total submission. Mastering tools like fogging is not just social theater. It is a vital defense for your nervous system. Your sovereignty depends on your ability to process disrespect before it turns into a toxic internal sludge. Look closely at the mirror and ask if your reflection shows a sovereign leader or a ghost. Depression is the final signal that your internal anger has run out of places to hide. Your body eventually screams the truths that your mouth was too afraid to utter to your superiors. True sovereignty begins when you refuse to let your own flesh become the graveyard for your dignity. This brings us directly to the most dangerous lie every people pleaser tells themselves in the dark. Every time you avoid a confrontation to keep the peace, you aren't actually avoiding a war. You are simply handing the strategic advantage to your enemy while you retreat into the shadows. Are you truly buying a lasting peace, or just renting a temporary and incredibly fragile truce? Machiavelli understood that conflict is an inevitable part of the human architecture we all inhabit. In The Prince, he warns that war is never avoided but only postponed to your disadvantage. Imagine your silence as a debt collected with high interest by those who wish to dominate. By staying quiet, you allow the predator to choose the time and place of the next strike. You believe your submission buys safety, but it only signals your ultimate vulnerability to the world. The prince knows that a strategic withdrawal is different from a cowardly retreat into total submission. To build your inner citadel, you must first confront the deep terror of being socially disliked. What is the true cost of your cowardice when measured against your lost personal sovereignty? We often mistake the absence of noise for the presence of true and lasting social harmony. Conflict avoidance is a slow-acting poison that erodes your standing in every room you enter. Machiavelli watched as empires crumbled because leaders feared the momentary discomfort of a necessary battle. Your social standing behaves exactly like those ancient empires, requiring constant defense to survive. If you refuse to draw a line, others will draw their own lines right across you. This realization forces us to redefine what it actually means to be a person of courage. You might think courage is the total absence of fear within your own beating heart. However, true courage is defined as acting while afraid rather than the total absence of fear. Think of your courage as a physical muscle that must be torn before it can grow. Every small confrontation is a rep in the gym of your own developing personal power. Cold empathy allows you to see the conflict clearly without being blinded by your own emotions. You recognize the threat, feel the fear, and choose your response from a place of logic. This is the foundation of sovereignty, acting despite the trembling in your voice or your hands. The world respects the man who can stand his ground when the social pressure becomes unbearable. Stop feeding the beast of submission and start building the walls of your own inner citadel. You are no longer a victim of circumstance, but a master of your own strategic engagement. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to be moved by it. Now we must learn the specific tools to turn this internal steel into external victory. The loudest thing in the room isn't the insult, it's the deafening silence that follows it. To stop the war, you must refuse to fight on the terms they have prepared for you. When an insult strikes, your instinct screams to defend your honor or explain your wounded feelings. Explaining your feelings to those who lack respect only provides them with fresh ammunition against you. They do not want to understand you. They want to see the crack in your emotional armor. Instead of handing them your vulnerability, you will adopt the cold perspective of Machiavelli's Prince. Imagine yourself standing on a high balcony, watching the petty skirmishes of the world from above. This position of the prince allows you to observe the social chaos without being touched by it. From this height, the words of the insulter are merely noise, unworthy of your dissent or attention. You achieve true sovereignty when you realize that not every challenge requires a verbal response. When the insult lands, do nothing but maintain steady, unwavering eye contact with your aggressor. Let the silence stretch out between you until the air feels heavy with their own insecurity. Without a reaction to feed on, the insulter will inevitably begin to feel the weight of discomfort. Watch as they start to fidget, their confidence dissolving under the pressure of your silent gaze. By retreating into your inner citadel, you remain unmoved while they scramble for a psychological footing. Use cold empathy to see their desperation for power without feeling any need to mirror it. Use flogging to absorb their insults like a mist, offering no solid surface for them to strike. Strategic withdrawal isn't a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate expression of personal power. Can you handle the weight of your own silence while the world demands an immediate response? The moment you stop reacting, the dynamics of the room shift entirely in your favor. They expected a victim who would argue, but they found a prince who simply observes. You have dismantled their game by refusing to acknowledge that the game even exists. When you finally stop reacting, you will notice something fascinating. They start to fumble. But silence isn't always enough. Sometimes you must speak, but never from your heart. Machiavelli famously warned that the lion is useless against a trap. For that, you need the fox. Disrespect often arrives disguised as casual conversation, a hidden trap set within a backhanded compliment. Are they truly attacking you, or are they simply exposing their own deep-seated fragility? Fragile individuals frequently belittle those around them because they feel their own social status is threatened. Most people operate on hot empathy, reflexively feeling the emotions and the sting of others' words. To survive the social hunt, you must discard this reflexive pain and embrace a sharper tool. Enter cold empathy, a clinical understanding of a person's motivations without catching their emotional infection. Think of cold empathy as a surgeon's scalpel, cutting through the drama to reveal the hidden truth. It is the ability to see the why behind the insult while remaining completely untouched by it. When you identify the trap, you move from being the prey to being the silent observer. Once you understand their motive, you can deploy a cheat code for any social interaction. This technique is known as fogging, where you agree with an insult to completely disarm your attacker. Fogging is like walking through a ghost. The insult passes through you without meeting any resistance. Can you really agree with a biting insult and still walk away as the winner? By agreeing with the critic, you suck the oxygen out of their fire and end the game. When they call you arrogant, simply reply that you do sometimes have a very high opinion of yourself. Your lack of defensiveness signals absolute sovereignty, leaving the manipulator with nowhere left to strike. This is a strategic withdrawal into your inner citadel, where no external word can cause a fracture. You aren't yielding to their power. You are making their weapons entirely useless against your calm. The prince knows that fighting a fool only lowers him to the level of the fool. Use cold empathy to see the trap and fogging to walk right through it unharmed. Stop trying to prove them wrong and start proving that their opinion doesn't move you. Mastering these fox-like maneuvers allows you to navigate the most treacherous social landscapes with ease. Remember, the fog doesn't fight the wind. It simply makes the wind's efforts completely irrelevant. You believe your kindness is a shield, but in the arena of power, it is often a target. There is a dangerous myth that being liked will protect you from those who seek social dominance. Machiavelli's masterpiece, The Prince, was never intended for those seeking a popularity contest or easy, shallow friendships. This cold manual was written specifically for individuals who prioritize their survival over the desperate need for being liked. Survival requires a clear-eyed view of reality, unclouded by the constant urge for social approval or external validation. Using fogging and strategic withdrawal allows you to protect your inner citadel while others search for a weakness. The seeker of approval is easily manipulated, because their every move depends on the fickle whims of others. True authority is not found in a smile, but in the sovereign distance you maintain from the crowd. To understand this psychological shift, we must look at the two primary forces that drive all human behavior. Machiavelli observed that all men are fundamentally driven by either the bond of love or the coldness of fear. While love is a powerful connection, it is also a fragile thread that breaks easily under heavy pressure. Fear, however, is a much more reliable anchor when navigating the treacherous waters of a modern social hierarchy. By choosing sovereignty over being liked, you dictate the exact terms of how others are permitted to treat you. Cold empathy allows you to see the fear in others without being swayed by the false warmth of love. Kindness without a backbone is merely submission dressed in the fine, deceptive silk of a polite personality. You must build an inner citadel where your personal worth is determined by your own values, not praise. Power does not flow toward the person who says yes to everyone, while neglecting their own inner strength. The prince teaches us that being respected is far more valuable than being popular in any hostile environment. If you play the social game only to be liked, you have already lost to those playing to win. Shift your focus from gaining affection to establishing a presence that no one ever dares to casually disrespect. When is it finally time to stop being the fox and start being the lion? There are moments when the fog must lift to reveal the predator waiting within you. Machiavelli famously identified the lion as the force necessary to terrify those who dare cross lines. You have mastered the fox's cunning, but now you must embrace the lion's absolute strength. Why settle for being simply liked when you can command a presence that demands true respect? The master of power wrote that men ought to be either well-treated or utterly crushed. This cold reality from the prince reminds us that half measures only invite further social disrespect. If you cannot win them with kindness, you must ensure they never dare to challenge you. In our modern world, crushing an opponent does not require violence or even a single shout. To crush an opposition today means surgically removing their access to your most precious resource. Your time is the ultimate currency of your sovereignty, and it must never be given cheaply. When someone consistently disrespects you, the most surgical consequence is your complete and total absence. This is not an emotional outburst, but a calculated strategic withdrawal from a failing social contract. Think of it as closing a heavy iron door that can never be opened again. You are not being cruel. You are simply protecting the sanctity of your own inner citadel. While fogging and cold empathy manage the noise, this final act defines your ultimate personal boundaries. Are you truly ready to crush the access that they have taken for granted for so long? A lion does not bark at every passing dog. He simply decides who enters his territory. Non-reaction is powerful, but removing the opportunity for interaction is the ultimate move of sovereignty. By vanishing from their life, you leave a vacuum that no amount of apology can fill. This surgical strike sends a clear message that your presence is a privilege, not a right. Stop negotiating with those who only understand the language of loss and social consequences. Every minute you spend on a disrespectful person is a minute stolen from your own growth. Let your silence be the final word in a conversation they no longer deserve to have. Your time is the currency of your sovereignty, so you must always spend it very wisely. But even the most powerful lion understands that true strength sometimes requires retreating into the shadows. If your presence is always guaranteed, your value inevitably begins to diminish in the eyes of others. Think of your time as a rare diamond whose worth is defined entirely by its scarcity. When you are constantly available, you become a background noise that people eventually learn to ignore. Machiavelli observed this human tendency long ago, noting that excessive familiarity eventually breeds a deep contempt. People stop seeing your worth when they feel they have complete and permanent access to you. This brings us to a critical distinction between a petty tactic and a high-level power move. You must never confuse a strategic withdrawal with a manipulative and immature game of silent treatment. The silent treatment is a desperate attempt to provoke a reaction and regain control through guilt. It is a loud, emotional cry for attention that ultimately signals your own internal instability. Strategic withdrawal, however, is a quiet act of self-protection designed to recalibrate a broken dynamic. It is not about punishing the other person, but about reclaiming the sovereignty of your own time. By removing yourself from the equation, you force others to confront the reality of your absence. Why are you so available to people who have done nothing to earn your precious attention? Ask yourself if your absence is actually felt, or if you have simply become a ghost. Withdrawal allows you to enter your inner citadel and assess the situation with cold, clear eyes. It creates a vacuum that forces the disrespectful party to realize what they have actually lost. This period of distance acts like a battery recharging, restoring the boundaries you previously allowed to erode. You are practicing a non-reaction that protects your sovereignty while you step back to see the board. When you return, you do so on your own terms, with your personal value newly restored. Remember that the most respected figures are those who know exactly when to walk away. Sovereignty is maintained by controlling the supply of your presence in a world demanding your attention. Use your absence as a scalpel to cut through the noise and re-establish your social standing. A prince knows that being too accessible makes him a servant to the whims of the crowd. True power lies in the ability to disappear until your presence is once again a privilege. Always remember that while familiarity breeds contempt, a calculated distance will always breed a higher value. Walk with me through the corridors of history, where the master of power, Machiavelli, once stood. He watched as the most influential leaders fell, not from war, but from being too accessible. Machiavelli observed a fundamental truth of the human heart that still dictates our social standing today. He realized that familiarity breeds contempt, a slow erosion of respect through the crime of overexposure. When you allow everyone total access to your thoughts, you effectively dismantle your own natural mystery. In the pages of The Prince, the message is clear. Being too available makes you common. Think of the great monuments of the world, shrouded in mist and hidden behind guarded iron gates. Their value isn't just in their stone, but in the difficulty one faces simply to see them. Scarcity is the currency of sovereignty, creating an aura of importance that common presence can never achieve. When you are always there to answer every call, you become a commodity rather than a king. Strategic withdrawal is not an act of cowardice, but a deliberate move to reset your social value. By retreating into your inner citadel, you force others to acknowledge the void your absence creates. This silence acts as a mirror, reflecting their own lack of boundaries back upon their confused faces. Consider the ancient rulers who only appeared once a year to their most loyal and devoted subjects. Those brief moments of visibility were cherished precisely because they were so rare and fleetingly short. You must learn to treat your presence like a precious resource that is earned, not expected. Non-reaction is your first line of defense when others try to pull you back into commonality. Use cold empathy to observe their need for your attention without feeling the obligation to provide it. Fogging allows you to remain elusive, giving away nothing while appearing to participate in their trivial games. True power lies in the ability to vanish, leaving them to wonder if they ever knew you. Machiavelli knew that once the mystery is gone, the subject begins to judge the ruler as equal. To maintain your sovereignty, you must remain the puzzle that they can never quite manage to solve. This distance creates a vacuum that others will naturally attempt to fill with their own rising respect. Step back from the noise of the crowd and watch how your value climbs in your absence. This is the cold geometry of influence, where less of you always results in more of them. The world treats you exactly how you have been treating yourself in the dark shadows. Beyond the cold strategies and games of power, there's a fortress you must now build. This mental fortress is known as the inner citadel, an ancient Stoic sanctuary for your soul. Within these high walls, you are the only sovereign who holds the keys to your peace. No insult or slight can ever enter this sacred space without your explicit and conscious permission. Do you truly respect the man staring back at you in the mirror every single morning? Who are you when the lights go out and there is no audience to perform for? This internal self-respect acts as a magnetic field, altering the very fabric of your social interactions. When you value your own worth, disrespect simply finds no fertile ground to take root. Low-level behavior naturally bounces off your sovereignty like waves crashing against a solid granite cliff. You are no longer a target for the manipulative because your internal boundaries are made of iron. This internal shift does more than repel the weak. It attracts those of much higher character. High-level individuals are drawn to those who meet them at their own elevated level of dignity. They seek peers who refuse to be dragged down into the mud of petty social games. By cultivating this inner citadel, you transform from a desperate seeker into a sovereign of self. Stop looking for validation outside yourself and start reinforcing the foundations of your own character. Every small decision made in private contributes to the strength of the walls you show others. True power is not a loud performance, but a quiet realization that you are already complete. Once you respect your own essence, the world has no choice but to follow your lead. Build the citadel with care, and the right people will soon seek entry to your world. Sovereignty is not about controlling others, but about being the undisputed master of your own mind. When you stand firmly in your truth, the opinions of the masses lose their power to hurt. This is the ultimate shield, forged in the fires of self-discipline and quiet internal victories. A man who respects himself never needs to demand respect from those who are beneath him. Your presence alone becomes a filter, weeding out the toxic and inviting the noble to remain. Let's look at the fence line where these silent battles are actually fought every single day. It starts subtly, perhaps with a pointed joke about your shoes that feels slightly too sharp. You might dismiss it as humor, but Machiavelli would recognize this as an initial probe of strength. Then comes the meeting where you are accidentally interrupted before you can finish your important thought. Soon, they arrive half an hour late, signaling that their time is more valuable than yours. These are not accidents. They are social boundary tests designed to see what you will endure. Think of boundary testing as a dog checking a gate for a weakness to exploit later. How many small jokes have you swallowed today, while pretending they didn't cut your soul? Every time you ignore a slight, you are teaching the world how to mistreat you further. The prince knows that sovereignty begins by guarding the smallest cracks in your foundation of respect. When someone interrupts you, the most powerful tool in your arsenal is a heavy, cold silence. A simple, steady look can act as a non-verbal reset button that stops a predator cold. Utilize fogging to absorb insults without reaction, showing the world your shield is truly impenetrable. Firm boundaries, delivered with cold empathy, signal that you are a person who demands absolute respect. By refusing to react emotionally, you keep your inner citadel completely intact and under your control. If someone is late, address the violation immediately rather than letting the disrespect settle in. When you correct a violation instantly, others begin to classify you as deserving of true respect. Do not fear the awkwardness, for that tension is where your social power is actually forged. Remember that offense only works if every post is standing strong against the outside world. Why should their convenience take precedence over the dignity you have worked so hard to build? Every social interaction is a negotiation of status, whether you choose to acknowledge the game or not. Silence is not weakness. It is the loudest statement of power in a noisy, crowded room. When you master non-reaction, you become a mirror reflecting the aggressor's own insecurity back. Strategic withdrawal from a toxic conversation protects your energy and reinforces your value to others. In every encounter, the correction must be as immediate as the violation itself occurs. If silence is your primary shield, the Socratic method becomes your most powerful social spotlight. When someone throws a passive punch at you, do not ever attempt to punch back. Instead of reacting, you must calmly ask your opponent to describe the fist they used. Passive aggression thrives in the shadows, hidden behind a thin veil of fake politeness or humor. You can use the Socratic method to force any insulter to unpack their hidden passive aggression. This tactical approach involves asking simple, pointed questions that strip away their plausible deniability. When they make a cutting remark disguised as a joke, simply ask what they meant. Look them directly in the eyes and ask why that specific comment is funny to them. This forces the aggressor to explain the insult, which effectively kills the humor and the sting. Use cold empathy to remain detached while they struggle to justify their poorly veiled disrespect. Machiavelli understood that exposing a hidden enemy is far more effective than engaging in open combat. By refusing to be baited, you maintain the sovereignty of your own internal citadel. When you demand clarity, you turn their own weapon against them in a silent social clinch. Non-reaction is your greatest ally when you are dragging their true intentions into the light. Most people will quickly retreat once they realize their subtle probes are being met with scrutiny. They will often perform a strategic withdrawal, realizing they can no longer manipulate you from safety. You are no longer a passive recipient of their vitriol, but the conductor of the conversation. Forcing them to unpack the insult reveals the smallness of the person standing across from you. This practice reinforces your sovereignty and signals that you are not a target for easy prey. They will stop playing the game once they realize you are the one holding the controller. You believe your passivity is a virtue, but true peace is never built on a foundation of weakness. You are not a peaceful man if you are simply incapable of causing any form of harm. To hold your ground effectively, you must now look directly into the depths of your own shadow. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung observed that every person carries a dark, repressed side within their own personality. He called this hidden reservoir of primal instincts and untapped power the human shadow. Most people spend their entire lives pretending this dark part of their soul does not actually exist. They hide behind a mask of kindness because they are actually terrified of their own hidden teeth. Is your current kindness a genuine choice, or is it just a total lack of other options? When you lack the capacity for aggression, your goodness is merely a quiet form of total submission. Think of your shadow as a powerful, caged beast that keeps your entire house safe and secure. Without that beast, anyone can walk through your front door and take whatever they desire from you. Integrating this shadow is the only way to achieve true sovereignty over your own social life. Machiavelli understood this balance perfectly, recognizing that peace is often a state of armed neutrality. The Machiavellian paradox states that to have lasting peace, one must always remain prepared for war. This does not mean seeking conflict, but possessing the strength to end it if absolutely necessary. Your inner citadel remains vulnerable until you master the darker forces lurking within your own mind. Using non-reaction and strategic withdrawal requires the internal muscle of a well-integrated shadow side. Only when you are dangerous can you truly choose to be a man of lasting peace. Are you brave enough to finally meet your shadow and reclaim your lost primal strength? This shift in perspective transforms you from a victim into a guardian of your own boundaries. True peace is the calm of a lion, not the frantic safety of a hiding mouse. To have lasting peace, you must always remain fully prepared for the coming social war.